live stream, so to speak. Mr. Frank, I don't see Miss Giles, so it looks like you're going to run the show tonight.
Yes, sir. That is correct.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're welcome. You just tell me when we're ready to go, Director Vunich.
Well, I see a little thing that says live on YouTube, and it's 7:01. So, Mr. Chair, I think you can take it away if Ms. Tallman's ready.
I'm ready.
All right, thank you. This evening is our monthly meeting of the Board of Adjustment. While we are having to change how we operate, we are still committed to a transparent process and encouragement of public comment during our meetings. We will be accepting public comments based on using the hand raise feature. You can raise your hand at any time and we will recognize you as we get to the public participation portion of the agenda for each case. Director of Planning, Joe Vunich, will be moderating the Zoom meeting and will be asked to provide names of those individuals that wish to speak, again, as hands are raised. I would like to call the meeting of the City of Wildwood's Board of Adjustment to order. The board members present today are Deborah Coleman, board member, Bob Morris, board member, Michael Lee, alternate member, and Jim Rubis, alternate member, and myself, Jared Frank, vice chair and acting chair for tonight's meeting. The Department of Planning staff present is Joe Vunich, Director of Planning, and Robin Keefe, planner. City Attorney John Young and court reporter Courtney Tallman are also present. First, I offer into the record the affidavit of publication pertaining to today's meeting, August 19th, 2021, and take official notice of the zoning ordinance of City of Wildwood, including Chapter 400, Article 2, authorizing and establishing the Board of Adjustment's powers and duties. Now let me explain the hearing procedure. Please be aware the information I'm about to describe is also provided on the Board of Adjustment public hearing procedure handout, which was available online prior and up to tonight's meeting. This hearing is informal in its nature. However, the meeting's proceedings will be recorded by a reporter for future transcription if needed. The petitions are called in the order listed on the agenda. As the petition is called, I will ask the Department of Planning staff member to read each request into the record. Thereafter, the Department of Planning will have open remarks and a brief slide presentation. Then the petitioner or his or her representative will be asked to state their name, address, be sworn in by the court reporter, and make a brief presentation to the board explaining the nature of the requested variance and the hardship necessitating it. The board will only consider the nature and condition of the property and whether these factors mandate a variance in order to allow for its full utilization. Board members may ask questions to clarify the facts of the petitioner's presentation. When the board is satisfied with the material presented by the petitioner, the chair will then ask if there is anyone present online who would like to speak in favor or opposition to the request. Each speaker will be asked to provide their name and address, be sworn in, and then state their comments. Procedurally, the petitioner may request a continuance at any time during the hearing, prior to a call for the vote, in order to bring an additional documentation of information. The board may also request a continuation to gather additional information or for a further visit to the site. After the conclusion of input from all interested parties, the board will ask a staff person to provide the Department of Planning's report on this matter, if requested by any board member of the board, the petitioner, or any individual that is participating online. Additionally, any other information not presented in the previous testimony but pertinent to the request will be noted at this time. Once all speakers have been heard, the chair will call for a motion to grant or deny with or without conditions, then the board will vote. At that time, the discussion relating to the petition is concluded and no further input will be permitted. The board will generally make a decision today. 4 members of the board must vote in favor of the petition for it to be approved. If a variance is approved, the petitioner has 6 months to obtain the necessary permits or establish the use, or it will expire. If the board's decision is unfavorable, the petitioner has the right to appeal to the St. Louis County Circuit Court. This appeal must be done within 30 days of the decision. Director Vunich, are there any questions at this time?
Mr. Chair, if you would mind, I would ask any of the attendees, if you have questions regarding the material just read into the record by the acting chair, if you would use the raise hand feature, then those questions can be provided and hopefully we'll have the answer for you. Again, this is just regarding the procedures that were read by the acting chair. Thank you. Mr. Chair, I see no hand raised feature, so I think we're okay to proceed.
Thank you, Director Vunich. Hearing no questions at this time, the board will proceed. Please read the first request into the record, which will be followed by initial comments by the Department of Planning and a brief slide presentation.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the first petition tonight is BA 18-21, Mesra Milanovac, pardon me, I'm sorry, 16204 Bay Harbor Court, Wildwood, Missouri, 63040. Requests an exception to the minimum yard requirements general for the purpose of constructing a 20-foot by 12-foot sun deck upon the property located at 16204 Bay Harbor Court, locator number 24U 541303, lot 70 of the landings at Lake Chesterfield subdivision, Plat 2, which would thereby authorize a rear yard setback distance of 13 feet in lieu of the required 30 foot for the proposed sun deck. This request is contrary to the requirements of Chapter 415.140 R3 10,000 square foot resident district regulations of the City of Wildwood zoning ordinance and St. Louis County Planned Environment Unit PEU ordinance number 14953, which was approved by the St. Louis County Council in 1990. This particular property is located in Ward 7. Mr. Chair and members of the board, before proceeding, the department would also like to enter into the record regarding this particular petition the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code dealing with the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the same City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any testimony, exhibits, plats, maps, photographs, or other items that are offered as part of the testimony regarding this petition at tonight's hearing. Mr. Chair and members of the board, we also have a request that Ms. Keefe will explain that's a little unusual, but I think it's appropriate to present it first before we get into the specifics of the case. Thank you.
Please go ahead.
Apologies, I was trying to shortcut it. The department has received correspondence from a city council member of Ward 7 requesting that the case tonight be postponed. Apparently, he's been listening to constituents coming to him today with this case and wants more time to investigate the matter. So we just put it to the board this evening as to how you would like to proceed.
I would ask Director Vunich, is that within our jurisdiction to decide that, or should we proceed, have the petitioner come forward and then, inquire if they would like to see? I'm not sure how we would.
It is a bit of an unusual request, but in this particular instance, we have received a number of comments, many of which came today and were forwarded to you via email. And the comments generally are not in support of the requested variance. And there seems to be some confusion. And that confusion is from the city because of how St. Louis County approved the setbacks and how the city, when it incorporated, changed the setbacks. But I would suggest that we promote the petitioner, have the petitioner sworn in by the court reporter, and ask him if the delay of an additional month would be acceptable so that we could generally try to figure this all out and maybe find a successful route for all parties.
I would agree with that. I was surprised at the number of emails that came in today, especially late this afternoon. And then the council members' request as well. So do we need to vote on that, Director Vunich, or is it okay to go ahead and proceed?
Again, I'd just like to give the petitioners an opportunity to respond to the request for postponement. And then if the board is ready to proceed forward, then certainly we can. But
I'm sorry, I meant not to vote on the variance. I meant to vote on how we move forward.
yes,
Or can we make that decision just to go ahead and move on?
yes, the vote on a postponement can be done by motion and second.
Correct.
It can be a voice vote, and only a simple majority is needed in the case of a postponement. And again, like I say, I think it would be appropriate, just to respect the petitioners, to have them sworn in and at least respond to the request for postponement.
Absolutely. So at this time, Director Vunich, did you want to make any initial comments pertaining to the petition?
No, sir, other than thank you for letting us explain the kind of request we received from Mr. Flasher, who represents one of two that represents Ward 7. We also heard from the other Ward 7 representative too, and that's why I think it's appropriate, but I'll let the petitioners tell us what they're thinking.
Great. Ms. Keefe, do you want to go ahead and do the presentation? Or do we go ahead, do we want to go move straight to that?
I'd go ahead and let's talk to the petitioners first.
Great. Well, at this time, I would like to call forward the petitioner. Please state your name, address, relation to the property, and then be sworn in by the court reporter.
Hello, my name is Mirza Mullah Osmanovich. My address is 16204 Bay Harbor Court. I am the owner with my wife, Samantha.
Hi. Okay. I'm going to swear you in.
Okay,
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Mr. Mullis Manovich, I apologize. I'll do my best here. Can you please explain the nature of the request, the hardship or practical difficulty necessitating the variance relating to the character of the property only?
Sure. I just want to warn you real quick. We have a baby in the background that might be disrupted.
Totally understand.
And
So we're in a cul-de-sac. The home is very, like you'll see in the slideshow, the home is really far back on the property. We have a tiny backyard. If this were pre-95, when the rear setback requirement was 15 feet, then we could build a deck without having to do any of this. But unfortunately, because it's 30 feet, we can't build a deck. And you'll see from the pictures that we have a sliding glass door in our kitchen that just goes out to a giant drop, because the home was originally intended to have a deck, but the original owner never put one in. We purchased the home as a foreclosure. We've been redoing everything and planning on, doing a backyard, because right now it's virtually unusable. Currently, we just mow it and that's it. That would be the grievance, that our house is set so far back on the property in the cul-de-sac that we're sort of stuck with what we have.
Now I assume you were listening a few minutes ago, we had some interesting developments happen in the last few hours here.
Sure.
I guess if it's appropriate, I would first just ask kind of your thoughts on postponing it to allow a little more information gathering. How does that sit with you initially?
I mean, initially not good, only because we've had a month to do this. Once the vote is done, since we only get 6 months right now, it's impossible to get contractors out to do anything. And when they come out, it's more than 6 months as far as the timeline is concerned. So most of the people I had come out gave me timelines that fall within that 6 month range, but the patio people want to come out next month and do it. Well, for the patio people to do it, I need to know if they need to install the piers or the deck or not. So it doesn't sit well with me, but if I don't have any choice, it is what it is. I think my concern is, I've watched the last year worth of YouTube videos of these proceedings, and it doesn't seem like the city council really has any input in the process. So it's interesting that a council member can come forth and sort of disrupt it. And I'm wondering what exactly is going to happen going forward over the next 30 days, if that is what happens.
Mm-hmm. No, I understand, and our intention is not to disrupt it. It was more, are there other options? Are there other scenarios that may play out? Yeah, I understand the 30-day delay is not ideal, especially everything going on. Director Muniz, is there anything that you would like to weigh in on this, or how we would?
Well, with the presentation of the request by the petitioners, certainly we've proceeded a little further along than I had hoped before we had the question of postponement. What I would suggest now is to allow Ms. Keefe to do the presentation of the slides, so that now you've heard the request from the petitioners. You can kind of put it in context with the photographs and the plot plan and different items that have been provided. And then I would proceed forward and let the other attendees, if they want to speak on this matter, speak. And then we can make the decision whether to proceed forward with a vote or postpone. Ms. Keefe, if you wouldn't mind doing share screen and narrating, it'd be much appreciated.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Chair, with your permission, I will go ahead with the presentation for this evening.
Please.
All right. So to give you a little bit of context from what we just heard, let me see if I can get, oh, my apologies. There we go. All right, so we are looking at a property this evening that is located in the landings of Lake Chesterfield. This property is located just to the east of our town center. So you can see Highway 100 up here and Old Manchester Road. And to the south, we have Old State Road, and fairly intensive residential development in the surrounding area, all in that R3, 10,000 square foot residence district for the most part in the general vicinity. Most of these subdivisions are either planned environment units approved by the county, or planned development overlays approved by the city of Wildwood. So that gives you some context. Generally, these are intensive residential subdivisions surrounding large common areas. So this is an aerial of the property. It is located on a cul-de-sac and fronts Bay Harbor Court, which is maintained by the city. The abutting subdivision here, which includes these homes to the rear of the property, is the estates at Copper Lake. This slide here shows what is very pertinent to the discussion today. There is a bit of a grade change from the subject property to the abutting properties. We're looking at least a 10-foot drop to their rear property line, and then even more like 12 or 16 feet once you get into the abutting neighbor's rear yard. So this backyard is largely held up by a retaining wall. Here is a view of the residence. This is looking to the east, slightly north. This is going out of Bay Harbor Court, looking to the south, and the subject property would be over here to the east. This is a view into the cul-de-sac, and this is the neighboring property. The subject property is over here, and this is looking northward. And then this is a view of the southern side yard. And this is a view from that side yard looking out towards the cul-de-sac to Bay Harbor Court. This is a view of the front lawn, and this is looking north, and this is the subject residence. And this is moving further north. So you can see this large area and all these abutting rear yards. And then turning the corner of the house, this is the northern side yard, and this is a view to the east. And we're just going to continue. You can start to see that concrete block retaining wall as we round the corner of the house. And then this is a view of the rear of the dwelling. We're looking southwest. And this is their rear yard, held up by the retaining wall, looking to the south. And this is a nice perspective here, given the discussion that will follow shortly. Here is the subject property's retaining wall. Subject property is up here. And then these are the abutting properties in back. So you can see that grade change here. This is looking south. And then this is a picture. This is the sliding glass door that they are talking about. The proposed deck would be built at this second story level to that sliding glass door. And here is their proposed plan. And this gives the context of what they brought up earlier. Here you can see their proposed deck. And we've got a few different colored setback lines here. And the reason for that is because this was originally a plan, well, it still is a planned environment unit approved by St. Louis County. So it has its own site-specific ordinance that was crafted in such a way that had language to where when the jurisdiction changed, when Wildwood Incorporated, we adopted our underlying zoning district categories. So originally the 15-foot rear setback was this green line. And the proposed deck would have only clipped the corner. So just a very, very small encroachment. But now under City of Wildwood setbacks, we're looking at a 30-foot rear setback. And so you can see from this line that that gives them pretty much no rear yard to develop. And then this is just another perspective of that same photo, but with a little bit more of this retaining wall to give perspective. This is a view looking to the west. This is their southern neighbor here. So they've got some buffering there. And then this is a view of the abutting properties to the rear. So this is looking northeast. And then this is their neighbor directly to the east. And then that gives just a little bit more of that perspective. So there is support for the request by neighbors along that same street on Bay Harbor Court. But there is significant opposition to the request from the abutting rear properties in the neighboring subdivision and some of their neighbors. The applicants have obtained trustee approval for the landings at Lake Chesterfield, but the president of the neighboring trustees has expressed his opposition. There has been a previously approved variance for the subdivision, this property here, also for a sun deck that was encroaching into a setback. And with that, I'll conclude my presentation.
Thank you, Ms. Keefe. At this time, are there any questions from the board? Go ahead, Board Member Lee.
Mr. Vunich, with regards to the setback criteria, the survey is dated 2013, so it's under the new criteria. And they've noted the original approvals, which would be the entitlement of the property with the 6-foot setbacks on the side and the 15 rear yard. Wouldn't that still control as the controlling document as to how this was platted?
It would, if St. Louis County had specified distances versus the zoning district's setbacks in a general statement. So the way the planned environment unit ordinance reads is that all setbacks shall comply with the R3 10,000 square foot resident district. Since the city of Wildwood does not have a St. Louis County R3 10,000 square foot resident district, we only have ours, and ours specifies a 30-foot rear yard versus a 15. If St. Louis County would have specified in the actual ordinance the distances of 15 versus the R3, then we would have honored them. Because again, that's what the ordinance, the site-specific ordinance described. We do not apply it to existing improvements, but since this is new construction, we are obliged to apply the new setback.
Okay, thank you.
Rubus?
Yeah, in regards to, I'd like to ask the home rate. Right now, the house is in the setback. Is that correct?
That is correct.
The proposed deck, how far from that fence, after it's completed, how much past?
Are you asking from our fence or the neighbor's fence?
Okay, I only saw the one fence on the retain at the
On top of the retaining wall. It'll be a little over 3 feet away from it.
And then you have another 10 feet past that.
That's correct.
And just as, has any of the Ward 7 council people contacted you today?
They have not. I will note, I posted this on our neighborhood Facebook page, which obviously doesn't mean much, but one of the Ward 7 council members is in that group and he saw the post. I noticed his name on it weeks ago.
But as far as this postponement and everything, he has not contacted.
Nobody has said anything to me up until Robin called me 45 minutes ago or whenever it was that we spoke.
Okay, thank you.
Any other board members have questions for the petitioner? I have a question. Were you aware of any of this?
Absolutely not. Even the contractors that came out were not aware of a 30-foot setback. I showed the original survey to the deck contractor when he came out. He said, well, if we have to, we'll make it fit within that 15-foot setback. And I was not aware of it until Robin pointed it out after I had filled out the application.
Ms. Coleman, did you have a question?
I'm trying to get to the chat button. I was just wondering, the people that did not want the deck built, was it mostly, what was the reasoning? Was it because I got the impression a lot of them thought it was too high up and that they had no privacy in their yard? Was that their main opposition?
Yes, Ms. Coleman, that is correct. That seems to be the main issue is privacy, concern for privacy.
Okay, so if a stairs was built down and the deck was lower to the ground, would that maybe suffice? Would that maybe be a way to compensate?
I think given that the sliding glass door is on that second story, that is the natural entrance out onto a deck, but I'll let the applicants also answer this question.
Well, yeah, because it could be like a small landing. I've seen this before, a small landing where you come out and then steps taking you down. And then you have deck lower so other people wouldn't really feel like their privacy is gone, that kind of thing.
If I want to speak to that real quick. So
Go ahead.
if we did have a small landing with stairs coming straight off of the sliding glass door, I mean, there would still be a landing up top. It would be essentially a miniature deck, then some stairs, and then another deck, which would eat up all of that space on the, why not just put stairs to a patio then?
Well, that's true. That's true. I was just trying to think of something that might make everyone that was
Sure.
opposed feel a little. Better.
If you look at, I'm going to share my screen for just a second, if you don't mind. But if you look at our neighbors to the south, if I can find it here. Okay, so if you look at our neighbors to the south, their deck is basically, our kitchen is right here. And their deck is essentially the same distance from our kitchen window as our deck would be to their kitchen window. So I don't think that I think it's similar to other houses in the neighborhood. Like Robin said earlier, they're very dense and close to each other.
Mhm. Yeah, I see that.
And we were thinking this would actually potentially improve our privacy, because right now, if I look out that window, I see everybody, or I see everybody out of my sliding glass door window. But if there's a deck there, that deck is basically blocking half the windows and the sliding glass door that's in our kitchen.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Ms. Coleman. Couple questions. I noticed that there's another sliding door. Is that to another area? Are there plans to connect to the deck?
No.
Or plans to
No,
build
the plans for that were to get rid of that and put a window there.
Excuse me. The only other kind of to discuss what Ms. Coleman was saying, has there been any thought to, if you were to come out that slider and have a deck that would be inside the variance and make a right and kind of head back towards your garage? Again,
so the variance is to our house. You can't build anything back there because the setback is 30 feet, which lands inside of our house.
Mm-hmm. Well, the variance, I mean, right now you're asking for pretty much 12 of deck. The variance. So and again, I'm just trying to kind of think another option would be to have like a 4 to 6 foot kind of breezeway. You'd make a right and kind of go back to that garage space, which is kind of dead area anyways.
Yeah. So when we actually spoke to the neighbor next to us, and that was their concern, they absolutely did not want that. Sure. So it's as if I can't necessarily make anybody happy, because we're sort of stuck. You know, my thing is, this property was a foreclosure because half the space back there is not usable, and we're trying to improve it. We're going to spend $50,000 to do this, to make it better, right? You know, and I don't want to make anybody mad. I've spoken with the neighbors. Originally, everything seemed cool, and then once everybody started getting comment cards, everything changed. And I don't know if it's because 13 feet on that comment card is pretty, that seems pretty scary. So I was even sending out pictures of the plans to everybody to try to sort of smooth things over, but it doesn't seem like anything can necessarily be done without making somebody mad.
So Director Vunich, I guess my question here is, well, I don't, this is the petitioner or Director Vunich, but essentially, given the additional information tonight, and apparently there is a council member that wants to see if he can't work with you as well as the other residents. Do you have any desire to postpone, or would you like us to proceed?
I think at this stage, Mr. Chair, we need to hear from any of the attendees that would like to speak in favor or opposition.
Good
and
point.
then I think the decision is entirely on the board. If you hear something that makes you think we should postpone, then that is at your discretion. If you think you should proceed, certainly you could. But I'd go ahead and finish the process and let anyone that wants to speak.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So at this time, I would like to open up the floor to speakers in the audience who may want to speak in favor or opposition to this request.
And again, all we would ask is anyone wanting to speak on this particular request to please use the raise hand feature. And then Ms. Keefe will promote you to the screen, and then we'll ask that you give your name, address, and be sworn in. Thank you.
Okay, can you guys see me?
We can. Can you please state your?
Yeah. So, my name is Naresh Valdandi. I live at 367 Copper Lakes Boulevard. Right behind Mirza's home. So I know Mirza, good man. We always, nice to each other. So no offense here, but just wanted to, say that, I think whatever the presentation that, was shown that didn't have the picture of the complete back, like rear view that they will have of our house.
Sir, you need to be sworn in.
Yep. Can we please have you sworn in? With the
Oh,
clerk?
I'm sorry. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Go ahead, Ms. Town.
Do you solemnly swear or affirm that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Sorry about that. But yeah. So I think whatever the pictures that we saw didn't have the complete view that they would have of our backyard. So if you actually go through all the pictures or the complete house, Mirza's house, and also the wall, they already have 10 plus foot of elevation to all our backyards. So basically, they already have a very clear picture, clear view of our backyard. And if they add this deck, it's going to give them complete clear 180-degree balcony view of all of our backyards. And that's we are not okay with that. I'm not okay with that. So if the reason why we purchased a home in this neighborhood and this city is for privacy. I mean, if they will have clear view of our complete backyard, whatever we do, whatever our kids do in the backyard, we are not okay with that. I think that's the only main concern. And other than that, we are friends. So basically, I don't have any other concerns. Just basically, we don't want this. I mean, other people may say that plant trees and all, but it's going to take 10 to 15 years for plants to grow 30 feet tall. So we can't do that because it's going to affect take out our backyard space. We are going to do a lot of maintenance, and it's going to affect my children's or my kids play area. So these are the reasons why we are not okay with that. So
Okay.
I mean, just same what Mirza was saying. I think as Chair Jared was saying that can you when you were asking Mirza to build 3 or 4 foot and then build onto the other side of the house, then he was saying that other neighbors will not be okay with that. So why would we be okay with that when it's going to erode our privacy? It's not just one house, it's just all 3 houses, to be honest. And if you actually want to know what exactly I'm talking about, I think you should have a clear picture of, how it will look from my backyard when they build it, or, at least by standing there. So then only you'll understand what exactly, I'm concerned about.
Anything else you'd like to add?
I think that's it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you. Thank you for your input.
Thank you.
Director Bunich, are there other questions, comments from the audience?
Well, Mr. Chair, does any of the board members have any questions for the last speaker?
I'm a citizen next door, and I'd like to say something.
Sure. Yep, absolutely. Just a moment, please. Did anybody have a question for the first comments from the board?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay, we'll move on to the next audience member. If you could, please, sir, state your name, address, and then be sworn in by the court reporter, please.
Jay Nedesheim, 16212 Bay Harbor Court.
Okay, Mr. Nedesheim, or go ahead with the Ms. Tallman.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Okay, the floor is yours, Mr. Nedesheim.
Yep. So I live a couple doors down and kind of share the same view, except for our house is a little bit farther forward than Mr. Masovich's and his wife's home. So we have a little bit more of a backyard. But I think it's important to kind of describe what it looks like now and then what it would look like with the actual deck built. So right now, if you were to go out in the backyard of the petitioner's home, you look directly at the back of the people who are objecting to this house. So in a sense, from that bottom level where there was conversation about a deck being built there, you would actually gain more privacy by building the deck, because they would be looking over the roof of the neighbors down their house. So there wouldn't be any kind of peering in windows. I think it's important to note that a deck on top of that 12 to 16 foot drop, you're looking at another 10 feet. You're looking over the roof of the houses below you. So as far as privacy concerns go, I mean, right now they have less privacy than they would if the deck or the structure was actually built. So that would be my kind of input there as far as if they're concerned with their privacy. And then I would also note that right now the neighbor directly next to the petitioner has a deck, and it's kind of the same thing. It's already built, and I think it's also important to note that when this house was built, the variance was such that there could be a deck, and that the house was built with the intention to have a deck present. So that's all I'd like to say, and I'd just like to really reiterate the fact that I think it would actually increase their privacy versus decreasing it. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Nedeshem. Does any board members have questions for the last speaker? Go ahead, Ms. Rubis.
Mr. Nettlesheim, just to clear for the record, then you are in support of the petition variance.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for the speaker? Okay, at this time, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear are there any others? Looks like there's speakers. Okay, sorry, jumped the gun there. Mr. Thrasher, could you please state your name, address, and be sworn in by the court reporter, please? Looks like you're on mute there.
368 Copper Lakes is my address. Craig Thrasher is my name.
Ms. Tallman?
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Thrasher.
Hi. So I live across the street, and I can see the property through the houses from my driveway, but my concern is less about my view, but more of the chipping nature of this. I'm a former councilman. I served in Ward 6 about 15 years ago. And so I'm very familiar with at least the ordinances at that time. And I know that chipping has, and probably always will be, one of the biggest concerns to the city of Wildwood and our master plan. And this is a 57% reduction in the setback, which is not what I would call a variance. I would call it a very large variance. So this is going to create a precedent. I know that Ms. Keefe said something about another property. I guess it got the variance at some point, and I'd be curious to find out how big that variance was compared to this one and when that happened. Ms. Keefe, do you have any idea on that? I think you mentioned a variance for a neighboring property at some point for a deck that was inside the boundaries.
I don't have that information at my fingertips, but if you give me just a few minutes, I'll probably have it in just a few minutes.
No problem. Yeah, so I mean, that's basically where I'm coming from. I was asked to participate in this because I have a little experience with city government. And when I looked it over, it did seem like a shockingly generous variance. And I don't know the petitioner. We are in a separate subdivision, so Our HOA could obviously not work this out. Theirs is in favor, ours is not. And so I also spoke with Commissioner Beatty of Planning and Zoning, and he was a little shocked when he read it. And he said, it's obviously it's up to the Board of Adjustment, but it would be a very, very large variance. Not to put words in his mouth, but that's basically what he said.
Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Thrasher?
No, I just remember there were subdivisions being platted that we were not so generous. I think it was the town at Windrush. And this became a very large issue that they wanted to give really deep variances and very shallow setbacks. And there was a very large opposition from the existing, I think it's the Grover Farms subdivision. And we did not grant that as city council. So, obviously city council does have a role. I know the question was brought up, how Board of Adjustment versus Planning and Zoning versus council, but council is sort of the ultimate authority when it comes to these measures. Planning and zoning issues are often brought to council that can't be resolved. Joe, I don't know if you agree with that. That's how I remember it anyway.
Mr. Thrasher, certainly the city council on almost every item is the final word on whether something should happen or not happen in the city. In the case of the Board of Adjustment, as the chair read at the start of the meeting, any decision they make actually bypasses city council and goes directly to St. Louis County Circuit Court. So this is a fairly autonomous board in terms of its oversight. Thank you.
Okay, thanks for clarification. And Robin, I see you have your hand up.
Mr. Thrasher, I do have an answer to your question. The variance was approved in 1996, and it was a rear yard setback of 10 feet in lieu of 15.
So about 30% or a third. 96 was the second year of existence of the city. So it's been a while. Okay, I appreciate that. I'm done.
Does any board members have any questions for Mr. Thrasher? Okay. Hearing none, appreciate your input, Mr. Thrasher.
Thank you all for your service.
Director Bunich, is there anybody else that would like to speak at this matter? Okay. Go ahead and let them in.
Yes, sir. There's one more, I believe.
Okay. Or we wait on them to come in? Could the speaker please state their name, address, and then be sworn in by the court reporter, please?
Hi, this is Dave Granger. For whatever reason, my computer rebooted or something. That's what the delay was.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
Please state your name, address, and then be sworn in, please.
My name is Dave Granger. I'm at 363 Copper Lakes Boulevard. I am behind the subject property to the north end, next to Mr. Valdani.
Okay. You could be sworn in.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Ms.
As a former president of this Board of Trustees for the Copper Lakes subdivision, and having been on the board for many years, I too am afraid of the issue of chipping. That is, once you allow one guy to do something, then the next guy wants to do it a little more and a little more, and pretty soon you don't have any rules. I think that reducing the 30-foot setback to 13 feet is a massive change. It's not a little change, it's a big change, and will become a precedent for a lot of other properties. I am aware of the other exception that was granted in that subdivision that happened in 1996. I don't know all the specifics and details, but I lived here then, and I know that there are a number of neighbors who are still sore about that particular decision. Nonetheless, my issue here is that the property is very high and it is set well back on the property. If you look at that picture where shown from above, where you can see that the house next door has a deck as well. Well, that house is a little closer to the street. There is a bigger difference. Plus, there's substantial vegetation as a buffer between that deck and the house behind it. This house does not have substantial vegetation. There are some trees which do provide some buffer, but it's not complete. And I don't know how you would get any buffer tall enough within 10 years or more. The problem is this particular elevation is going to be very high, and it will look directly down into the neighbors' yards, which, it's kind of like a guard tower to me. And it's a little concerning that we would want to put that up there. The other thing is I am very concerned about that other sliding glass door on the second level, that we don't, at some point say, oh, well, let's, extend the deck down there and make it even bigger problem. So even if this is approved, which I hope it isn't, I would hope that one of the conditions be that, that particular option be foreclosed. That is no further building of the deck along the house. This house has been there a long time, since apparently 1994, and it hasn't had a deck yet. So I don't know why it has to have one now, but anyway, that's my opinion.
Anything else you'd like to add, Mr. Granger?
No, I think that's it.
Does any of the board members have any questions for the last speaker? Go ahead, Mr. Lee.
Actually, this is more a question for Mr. Vunich. The width of the deck, if I can kind of estimate this, and with the 15-foot rear historic setback and the 30-foot, is this going to be like 11 feet deep or 10 feet on the corner? Or, I mean, we don't have any dimensions on the drawing, so.
My understanding, the deck is to be 12 feet in depth and then have a width of 20 feet. So relative to deck widths, it's somewhat modest.
Mm-hmm. So if you went back to the original construction, this could have had a deck all the way across the back of this building up to the 15-foot rear setback if it were to be constructed back in the day.
Yes, and as Ms. Keefe mentioned, if the previous setback of 15 feet still applied, only that what I would call the southeasternmost corner of the deck would encroach about 2 feet.
Okay, thank you.
Does anybody have any questions for Mr. Granger before we let him go? Okay, thank you, Mr. Granger.
Mr. Chair, I do have a comment to make. Ms. Keefe mentioned that the previous variance that was granted in 1996 to the other lot in the same subdivision. I do want to note that the zoning ordinance was amended several times from the incorporation date of 1995 through 1996. My suspicion is, and I don't know this for a fact, and certainly we can find out, that at the time of that variance, the 30-foot setback for rear yard areas may not have been in place. And that's why it was advertised at 15 versus 30. But I just wanted to provide what I think is the explanation.
Okay. Thank you, Director Vunich. And I would just add one comment that as a reminder, this board does not set precedent by nature of what we do. This is a variance, meaning that each case will be looked at individually. So we do not set precedent. Just wanted to state that. At this time, There are any other questions? Any other speakers, Director Bunich?
I do not see any hand raised by the attendees. I think the remaining attendees are for the next petition relating to the railroad.
Okay. Seeing that there's no other questions, I'd like to offer the opportunity to hear an oral presentation of the department's report, if we would like to have one.
Yes, Mr. Chair, if I
Ms.
may.
Keefe,
Yep,
Ms.
absolutely.
Keefe, if I could interrupt. What the chair was asking is we can read orally the entire report if someone would like to hear that. In past years, we had done that. We only do it on request now.
Sorry, I misunderstood.
Be a lot of reading for you. So hearing none, I'd like to move directly to hearing any final comments from the department. Director Bunich.
Before letting Ms. Keefe proceed, I guess I have a question or a suggestion. If privacy is the main consideration, and knowing that any type of planting would take decades to mature and provide such screening, would the petitioners consider building some type of screen wall as part of the deck so that the other property owners to the east would have that privacy because there'd be a solid screen? Could be of the same deck material, it could be a fabric, it could be any kind of solid screen that ultimately might provide them the privacy they need and the deck the petitioners want.
So our plan was to use potted plants to provide the privacy. The neighbor to our south does the same thing. They have a ton of tropical plants that they put up that have huge leaves along the edge of their deck, which they use for privacy. Because, like I said, when we're doing our dishes, I can see them on their deck if if those plants weren't there.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate the response. I was hoping to find something that might be more permanent in nature and less less seasonal and more non-seasonal. But thank you. I appreciate the response.
Along those same lines, what material will the spindles have you? I don't know if you've gotten that far, but
They're going to be vinyl, and they're pretty chunky.
Okay.
We're trying to put in. So somebody had said that this house hasn't had a deck yet. So why does it need one now? Well, this house is going to be around for a long time, and we're not going to be the last owners of this house. So we're sort of just trying to take care of this issue now and be done with it by putting in an all composite deck that should last 30 years and, sort of obviously increase our home value, but more just to sort of finish this issue and be done with it because, the house was built to have a deck. It's got a window or a door that goes to nowhere. And also I feel like anybody who, you would make the assumption that this house is going to have a deck, given that it has that door right there, like that. Well, one day that house is going to have a deck. And so, you would think that something like that would be a deal breaker before you buy the house right next to it or behind it.
Director Bunich, are you up for any final comments? Is that where we are? I apologize. It's kind of been a little jumping around.
I assume that responsibility as we started. We kind of left our normal track, but Ms. Keefe will provide a summary of the department's recommendation.
Great. Thank you, Ms. Keefe.
Mr. Chair, members of the board, the department is recommending approval in this case. We do note the hardship created by the jurisdictional change. If the deck were being built under that original 15-foot setback, it would be a fairly minor encroachment. Both of us have been out to the property to take a look in terms of the privacy consideration. We've noted that the abutting properties, they currently have a setback of 15 feet. And most of the structures in their rear yards are 40 feet away by city aerial. Also, it was noted by the department that the deck would provide a secondary access point to the main living space of the house, If in the event of a fire, it could potentially be a public safety concern, honestly, that they don't have a deck back there now in terms of exiting the residence. So for those reasons, the department is recommending approval today. Thank you.
Thank you for that summary.
And Mr. Chair, with your permission, again, we do have a request from one of the two council ward representatives to entertain a postponement. I do just want to mention that again. And the department believes there is a way to address the privacy issue. Certainly the petitioners have an approach, and I think there's additional approaches as well. So I asked the board to consider that if they are, if they do move toward an approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you for that. Any final comments or questions from the board? Okay. Seeing none, I would like to close the proceeding for a vote. Do I have a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions? Mr. Rubis, you're on mute.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Can you state that one more time? You kind of faded out a little bit there.
I make a motion to approve.
Okay. Is there a second on that motion to approve from Mr. Rubis?
I'll second.
Okay, second from Mr. Lee, thank you. At this time, we will, I'm sorry, Mr. Morris?
Is that approved with conditions, Mr. Rivers? Is that what your motion was?
No conditions listed for Mr. Rubis. It was to approve.
Just approve it, okay.
To amend that, Mr. Rubis?
Yeah, I can amend it, and the petitioner's already said that he's going to remove that door. So if to the north, is that correct? I would not I would not oppose making that a condition of the approval.
We don't have any plans anytime soon to remove the door. I could guarantee that we won't move the deck there, but you're talking replacing all the siding on the back of the house and removing the door while we're trying to redo our backyard.
Mr. Vunich, would that require, would adding on to the deck require this process again, or can that be done without having to come in front of the board again?
If the deck was extended to accommodate the second above grade access, the sliding door, they would have to go through the variance process again.
And by that, we would have the transcript and the notes saying, where the petitioners expressed that he was not interested in expanding. Would that be fair to say?
Yes, we would have minutes from the meeting and also the record, obviously, through YouTube and the video recording itself.
Thank you, Director Vunich. So, Mr. Rubis, did you want to, I'm sorry, one more time, I'll put it out there for a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions?
Since he would have to go for another variance for that, I would say I would make a motion to approve, accept the department's recommendation to approve.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll go ahead and second, since it's the same motion.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Lee. At this time, we will do a roll call. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Rubis?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
And I, as chair, vote yes as well. Congratulations, your variance is approved.
Thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you. We'll move right into the next one, Ms. Keith, if that's okay with you.
I'll be reading it in, sir, and it's fine with me.
Sorry, Mr. Vunich.
That's quite all right. We're playing musical chairs a bit tonight.
Exactly. You're throwing me off a little bit. Go ahead.
BA 19-21 Wabash Frisco Pacific Association, 2400 Cambridge, High Ridge, Missouri, 63049. Care of Grant Stecker, Wind Engineering Company, 122 North Kirkwood Road, Suite 200, Kirkwood, Missouri, 63122. Request exceptions to the minimum yard requirements general, the regulations governing non-conforming uses, lands, and structures, the standards for development within the floodplain, and the general standards for flood hazard reduction to thereby allow for the construction of a storage building upon properties addressed at 101 and 155 Grand Avenue, locator numbers 26V 341241 and 26V 341252, Glencoe subdivision, plats 1 through 6, lot 7, which would thereby authorize a rear yard setback distance of 5 feet in lieu of the 30-foot standard from the property's eastern boundary line, the expansion of the non-conforming use, the standard for the property's, the expansion of a non-conforming use, the construction of a structure in the designated 100-year floodplain, and a gross building area of 960 square feet in lieu of the 400 square foot standard as defined by Chapter 415.070 FP Floodplain District Regulations, Chapter 415.090 NU Non-Urban District Regulations, and Chapter 415 Non-Conforming Uses, Lands, and Structures of the City of Wildwood Zoning Code, and Chapter 405.050 Provisions for Flood Hazard Reduction of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code. This particular property is located in Ward 6. Mr. Chair, members of the board, the department would also like to introduce into the record regarding this petition the following items. Chapter 400, Article 2 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the Board of Adjustment. Chapter 415 of the City of Wildwood Municipal Code, the zoning ordinance. The file that has been developed and maintained by the Department of Planning regarding this particular request and all contents contained therein, including the department's report with recommendation. And then finally, any items that are offered as evidence as part of tonight's public hearing, which would include any plats, photographs, exhibits, and other items relating to the matter. Mr. Chair, Ms. Keefe has a slide presentation she's prepared to provide at this time if you'd like.
Absolutely, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Chair, members of the board, our second case this evening has been here before us. Oops, let me share my screen. It has been before us previously. As far back as 2002, the Board of Adjustment has approved 2 variances for a very similar structure and the same location for this property. But the building permit was not obtained during the required time frame in each case. So this is actually the 3rd time this case has come before us. What we're talking about is a not-for-profit miniature railroad that operates in the location of Glencoe City Park and the L. Foster Memorial Trailhead at 109 and Old State Road. It is it runs on a limited basis throughout the season and provides rides to the general public on its miniature railroad. And you can see the tracks here on the city trail map. It is in the southeastern part of Wildwood next to the Merrimack River. And here is an aerial that gives you a little bit more insight into the entrance and its location along Grand Avenue. It is located, it is on a 1.5 acre parcel of land total. And it is in a 100-year floodplain. Floods regularly from the Merrimack River, with some of the more recent events in 2015 and 2017. The location in the floodplain makes all the structures on the property currently non-conforming according to city code. And here I'll walk you through some pictures of the site. This is a southeastern view from where Grand Avenue intersects with the railroad tracks. So this is Grand, and here are the railroad tracks. This is a closer look of some of the current structures on the property. This is a view of the Al Foster Trail, and this is Grand. The subject property is over here, and this is looking south. This is just a closer view. This is a view of the tracks leading away from the property to the northwest. And this is a view of Grand looking north. This is Glencoe City Park right here. The subject property is also to the east. This alley divides or provides a boundary between Glencoe City Park and the subject property. This is looking east. And then here, looking east and slightly to the south is where you can see where the future, the proposed location of this building would go. It would go between this building here and that building and back behind this tree. Here is the site plan. You can see the 5 existing buildings on site in green. Here is the railroad. The tracks would extend into the new proposed storage building. And here is Grand. These buildings are currently on site to service the operations of the railroad. There is office meeting space, storage space, and maintenance space located on the property. And this future building would also serve that purpose of maintaining the train. Oh, and this is the river would be over here to the south. Here's a view of the proposed future location of the storage facility. And this right here is looking to the northwest from that location. So it would be, this building would be to the left of it or the south of it. This is the northern view. This is Glencoe City Park. This is where it would go. Glencoe City Park. Here's the alley. This is a view from the rear of the property, looking to the southwest, just to give you an idea of what's back there. And then this is also in the rear, but looking east to the trees. And then with this final depiction of the aerial, you can see the proposed building in relation to the other structures on site. And that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Keith. Director Munoz, at this time, did you want to make any initial comments or go straight to the petitioner?
Mr. Chair, we promoted the petitioner and would prefer to hear from him.
Absolutely. At this time, we'll call petitioner forward. Please state your name, address, relationship to the property, and then be sworn into the court reporter, by the court reporter.
Hi, everyone. My name is Grant Stecker. I work for a wind engineering company located at 122 North Kirkwood Road. Our client is the WFMP. The representative, Joe Christensen, is not available on the Zoom meeting. Unfortunately, he's limited by this technology, I guess. So he's asked me to attend and present. The presentation you have given so far is very inclusive. I would add to it.
I'm going to have you sworn in by the court reporter, please. Go ahead.
Do you solemnly swear that the testimony you're about to give in this cause will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Sorry, go ahead, Mr. Stetcher.
Again, the presentation so far has been very inclusive. A few minor things to add. The pictures, the tracks, I think it's a little deceiving. The tracks are only about 12 inches wide. They give kind of a, you're used to seeing, 3 foot, 4 foot wide track, but they're very miniature in scale. So, and then the tracks, I think, I'm not sure if it was mentioned, they're about 2 miles long round trip. It's about a 30-minute ride. The volunteers, the rides, they ask for donations in the range of $2 to $3. So it's very neat little deal they have there. Open on Sundays and through the season. The building, again, would be tucked between the 2 existing buildings. Some of those buildings have been there a long time. It has flooded. So the new building would be a what we call a wet flood-proof building, meaning that we expect it to flood. The building would be equipped with flood vents to allow the hydrostatic pressure that would build up from high water to enter and exit the building. The utilities, there'd be electric service to the building. There would be a only utility, and it'll be raised higher than the flood elevation. So very rarely should, if at all, get wet. And the building itself will be anchored significantly to the ground so that if there's any floating debris, it's got a much better chance of not breaking away, floating down the river. The setbacks, the side setback that we're asking for is we're trying, the building needs to be positioned on the site to accommodate the size of the miniature rail cars. So therefore the building needs to, the corner of the building needs to have that shorter setback than the 30 foot. And the size of the building as well needs to be a little bit larger than the maximum 400 square feet to accommodate the type of work they'll be doing there and maintenance of these train cars that need to be in there and be able to work around it, have parts, access the cars from all sides. That's pretty much all I have, I believe. Any questions or anything I can add to?
All right, thank you, Mr. Stetcher. Mr. Morris, you have a question?
Yes, on one of the pictures, it looked like there was a tree in that area. Would that have to be removed, or is it, did I look at it wrong? I mean, it's just...
There's no vegetation that is in the way of the building. There's no grading, so no elevations. We're basically putting it on existing grade.
Okay.
And to my knowledge, there's no trees or anything in the way of the construction.
Okay, thank you.
Are you familiar, Mr. Stetcher, why the previous 2 variances were not acted upon or constructed?
I was aware that there was prior variances granted. I wasn't aware how long ago they were until tonight, unfortunately. But my understanding is just trying to get everything together required for this unique project. The variance, floodplain development. I think the floodplain issues really had slowed them down. Trying to find someone who was capable of doing it. The building itself is a pre-manufactured metal building. It's a nice looking building. It's going through ARB for their input, but trying to get a deposit on a building with a lot of the processes that need to go through the city, that's kind of put them in a delay. These guys are volunteers, so they do other things too, and I think they just weren't as anxious as they are today to get through the entire process. They've been very anxious the past 2 years, but with COVID, I don't think they opened last year at all not obviously to keep separated. So that's why it's at least the past 2 years they haven't pushed forward harder as they are right now.
Okay. Any other questions for the petitioner? Hearing none, Director Buch, are there any speakers in the audience that may want to speak in favor or opposition to the request?
Mr. Chair, there are no longer any attendees, so there are no speakers.
Okay. Would anybody like to hear an oral presentation of the department's report? Being none, would the Department of Planning like to take the opportunity to make any final comments, Director Bunich?
Yes, Mr. Chair, and thank you. Mr. Chair and members of the board, as has been noted by Ms. Keith's presentation, this particular matter has been before the Board of Adjustment on 2 previous occasions. In each of those occasions, the Department of Planning has recommended favorable support by the board members. In the findings of fact, we note that regardless of where the building might be placed upon the property owned by the association, it would need a variance. It is also my understanding that with the construction of this new building, according to all floodplain requirements, both of the city of Wildwood and the federal government, some of those trailers that are used for storage purposes will be unloaded and then removed. So in many regards, this is a positive not only for the railroad, but also the general community and its vicinity. Based upon the findings of fact, we are recommending to the board that they consider this request favorably. Ms. Keefe and I, as the Department of Planning, are available for any comments or questions at this time, and thank you for your consideration.
Thank you, Director Bunich. Any final comments from the board? Mr. Lee?
Yes, thank you. Mr. Vunich, as far as the timeline for pulling a building permit, with this being a non-for-profit and with actually a severe hardship on materials these days with supply backlog, it would probably make sense to provide a longer timeline for them to obtain and pull their permits so that they don't have to come back and do this again if this goes forward. Is there a timeline on this that we can adjust?
There is a typical timeline of 6 months. In the past, on occasion, not frequently, the board has granted a longer period of time. So if that is the inclination of the board members, as part of the motion, you could make it to recommend approval per the department's report and give anywhere from 8 months, 10 months, 12 months, or whatever the number might be. That's best for the best based upon current conditions with building materials, building cost, et cetera, et cetera.
Very, very good point, Mr. Lee.
Yes, thank you. I'd like to make a motion to accept the department's recommendations, but put a 2-year timeline to obtain the permits. I think that's appropriate because, quite honestly, what I'm seeing in our profession is we're a year out on some steel manufacturing before it can even be obtained. So I think that's appropriate. So I'll wait to hear your comments.
Absolutely. Director Bunich, what do you think of that 2 years?
If Mr. Beffa, our city attorney, does not have any objection to it, the department certainly does not. I would just always note that the WFMP has been in this area since, I believe, the early 1960s. It's a very unique feature, and we're proud to have it in Wildwood. So if we can do something to facilitate this within the confines of the regulations being met, certainly I would support the time frame. And Mr. Beffa, I did not get a chance to introduce him. He is the city attorney tonight.
Thanks for joining us, Mr. Beffa. We're not getting any volume there.
Has no objections.
Okay. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Any other final comments from the board? Mr. Rubis?
There's a motion on the floor?
Not yet. We're gonna.
Yeah, I actually made a motion and then extended the building permit time frame to 2 years.
Well, Director Bunich, should we close the proceeding first before we move forward?
Yes, typically that way once the proceeding is closed, then the petitioner can't ask for postponement. So you're obliged then to make some type of motion.
So unless there's any other final comments from the board, we'll close the proceedings for a vote. Can I have a motion to approve, deny, or approve with conditions? I think, Mr. Lee, do you want to?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and restate. I'll make a motion to approve the department's recommendations with a time limit of 2 years to obtain the building permit.
Thank you for that motion, Mr. Lee. Is there a second to Mr. Lee's motion to approve with extending the time frame for 2 years? Ms.
I'll
Coleman?
second. Yes, I'll second.
And thank you, Ms. Coleman. Mr. Morris, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Lee?
Yes.
Mr. Rubus?
Yes.
Ms. Coleman?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Congratulations, your motion is approved as well as with the condition of 2-year time frame to secure the necessary permits.
Perfect. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair, before we adjourn tonight, just an item. City Attorney John Young and I, along with the City Administrator Steve Cross, have been talking about trying to arrange some training since we have a number of new members on the Board of Adjustment. And so typically what we do is we schedule the training the same night as a meeting, but we start a little early. The training usually takes about 45 minutes to an hour. So before we leave tonight, I was just gauging your interest in having that training. And I would like to try to set it for either September or October, whatever's best for the board and Mr. Young and Mr. Beffa.
Okay. I was just checking personally do we know that would be, I guess first, fully agree that we want to do that training. September, that would be the 16th, is that correct? Okay. From those present, does that work? So we're looking at maybe a 6 o'clock start time, Director Unich?
I'm thinking so. Mr. Young's provided the presentation in the past. It may be Mr. Beffa this time, but usually it's about 35 to 45 minutes and then question and answer.
I know there's plenty of time, but do we know, Ms. Keefe, how many, do we have petitions on the docket already?
I know of one out there for sure, but there's just no telling. Typically we get everything like right at the deadline.
Okay, so we don't know. So at this point, yeah, I mean, at this point, I think we can go ahead and set it up for next time, Director Unich. Does that work?
Okay, sir.
On the call? Okay.
Thank you.
Yep. Is that anything else that we need to cover, guys? All right. Well, thank you much. Have a good evening, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ms. Tolman, I think the chair just adjourned the meeting.
No.
Got it. Thank you.
Thanks, Courtney.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Sam. Thanks, Courtney. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good night,
See you in a
everyone.
month.